Hey folks, this is Picohan on the North American server, and this is the Scharnhorst in Operation Narai in patch 0.9.10. I haven't featured Narai on the channel yet, so in this perhaps heyday of operations, I'll show this new route I've been running with the Scharnhorst, mostly for pubby games. The Scharnhorst is kind of power crept in randoms due to the poor matchmaking and the proliferation of the tier 9 power creep ships, but it's still really good in Narai, especially if you have loot gens, which I do not have. This first part is pretty straightforward. If you're a battleship, you want to shoot at the Wyoming first, then the Dugay, then the Clemson. I did not do that because I'm greedy, but you want to do the Wyoming first because that's the one that's most likely to delete your ships from range, and then you want to do the Clemson last because that's the one that's most likely to delete your ships from up close. I'm mostly straight lining. I'm paying attention to my priority target, and if there's too much on me, I'll try to turn in. But I'm otherwise aiming to go north of the island with the fort. I didn't get that much damage on either the Wyoming or the Dugay. As the Scharnhorst, they're both not really easy to citadel. The Dugay because you overpen, and the Wyoming because you can't pen it, except at some strange angles. Here I mostly want to get damage on the Emerald because it's an easy kill if you don't mess up like that. Here I would shoot the Emerald first, then the Iron Duke, and then the Nicholas. The Emerald because it's easy, the Iron Duke because that can hurt your teammates, and the Nicholas last because it really can't do that much damage to you, and your secondaries can work on him. I switched to HE for the Iron Duke. I don't think either is great here. Your HE is kind of terrible, but if he's angled, it's a little bit hard for your AP to get much pen damage either, unless you get some good superstructure hits. On the flip side, your HE can set fires like that just did. I kept shooting at the Iron Duke until he went behind the island, and then I switched to the Nicholas, but mostly I tried to get secondary damage on the Nicholas instead. And a lot of Narai with the Scharnhorst, you want to try to use your secondaries and torpedoes on closer targets and use your main battery on further away targets. Okay, so now that the Duke and the Nicholas are dead, we're going to continue along the route. So it's north of the island with the fort, and then I'm also going to go north of the island at D6-ish. If you're aggressive, you can kind of go more straight down the middle, but this is like a safer route, and with pubbies, I would prefer to stick to the safer route. Again, I did take a pot shot at the Dallas in the beginning, but Emily's a better target because you're more likely to get sits on the Emily. Like, this is a really good range for that. On the flip side, you're most likely just going to overpen the Dallas, so I've set the secondary on Dallas, and I'm shooting Emily. I did launch some cheeky torp to the Dallas. Occasionally you can get him, but he's kind of sly about it, so yeah. Emerald is also another good target once he starts giving you enough broadside. If you're fast here, you have a better chance of getting that broadside. Otherwise, Emerald has a lot of like thick plating, so you'll bounce a lot if he's bow in. after I round this island, I'm going to cut very slightly to the west, and this is kind of twofold. I want to try to dodge any torps that the Emerald and the Emily may have sent this way, and the more you play Narai, the better of a feeling you'll get as to whether they were able to launch their torps before they died. I also did that to launch the left torps at the Missouri, and you want to aim, like, if he's not broadside yet, you want to aim slightly ahead of the indicator because he's going to turn. And even then, it can be sometimes hard to hit that set. The right set I probably launched a little too early. As you can see, he had a lot of time to turn, and I only got 2 of them. You should get 3, like usually. So because of that, I'm having to do this little turn fight with him such that I don't give broadside, and this will lose me some damage in this next bit. Ideally, I would have wanted to get closer before I launch the torps and then actually turn the other way such that I'm going toward the carrier after that engagement. Now, I took a bit of damage there because I wasn't playing it that well, but in general, since the Scharnhorst has distributed armor and also the icebreaker, it can stand up really well to the Missouri salvos as long as you angle nicely. I shot torps at the corner where the Dallas sometimes spawns, but I think I'm a little bit too far away, and the timing is not great either. Now, like I said, if I had turned left while engaging the Missouri, I would be much closer and have a much better shot at landing that particular set of torps. Also earlier on, I took a pot shot at the Phoenix. Depending on where you are in the Missouri engagement, you can get pot shots on the Phoenix or the Lexington before you go and cut them off, and that can make your life easier when you have to engage them. Also lucky for me on this run, the Nicholas went inside the bay. This usually happens if you spot the Phoenix or the Lexington early. I don't change this route regardless of what he does. It's just that I have to be more careful on this side of the island if the Nicholas doesn't go inside the bay. But since it's just the Lexington and the Phoenix, I can basically just go in there. The worst situation is actually if you're slow and the Nicholas goes outside the bay and he engages you right as you crest the tip of the island, because then he can usually get his torps off, and that's not good. Unfortunately for me, my puppy team could not get the transports, which is very strange because usually with puppy teams they love to go for the transports, but that's just the nature of puppy Narai games. This route, at least, since it goes to the carrier, you're taking care of one of the secondary objectives yourself, so 4 stars should be pretty attainable, even with a bad team. For the carrier and Phoenix engagement, if you can, you want to kill the Phoenix first, because he has more firepower and he has torps. The Lexington does have secondaries, but they do damage to you a lot more slowly than the Phoenix. So the Dallas, by the way, he was at that corner where my torps missed. Sometimes he can be further south, But in the end, even though the torps missed, we did get some of the damage on him because we can shoot over this flat island. For this last section, which is basically running it down the 10 line, you want to shoot at cruisers first, then further away broadside targets, and then finally the closer in broadside targets. And you want to do this again because you're trying to basically maximize your net DPM output. The close things you can deal damage with secondaries and hopefully torps if your torp tubes are still intact by now. The fort is also a good target. It doesn't give any damage, but you do get XP if you kill it, and I find that you usually start to get reliable one-shots at maybe around this range. The Farragut is also kind of a priority target, but it's more important for you if you're coming through the mouth of the bay, because he can't really torp you when you're coming down the 10 line. So I do another wiggle here in order to launch the left side torps at the Bretagne, and then I'm going to use the right side torps on the New York while shooting at the Omaha. You kind of lose the use of the back turret when you're doing that zigzag, but if you launch the torps, I think it's worth it, especially because since you're going straight down the 10 line, it's hard to get that rear turret into action anyway. Even though I have torps on the way, I'm still shooting at the New York here because I do believe he's looking at me, and I want him dead before I cut to the left and go east of the small island. I launched the torps on the Bretagne a little bit too early again, so I did not get that hit. But we're still making good damage, and so you can just, if I made that hit, it would have another 20k damage on top of what the result is going to be. The Gallant is a non-issue because he does not load with his torps loaded, so usually you can just drive past him and set your secondaries, or even ram him. Again, the cruiser should be your first priority because you can get the biggest damage salvos on them, and these are all generally super thinly armed cruisers that you can overmatch in Citadel, usually unless they're perfectly broadside. Then you have the Dallas problem where you're just going to overpen. I do use my back turret here on the Queen Elizabeth instead of the cruisers because I want to maintain my speed and my heading. If you have decent health at this point, you shouldn't really care about angling or anything. You just want to try to drive by each ship, get the most damage you can, and then move on to the next one. The turtle back of the Scharnhorst will basically prevent you from instantly dying. Colorado here is usually the last ship, so a standard thing to do is actually ram him. I'm not sure why I didn't do that, but that could have been another 10k damage. But that's basically the end of the operation. Since this is only a 4-star, this is probably only 1800 to 2000 base, but that's a really good result for operations in this day and age, especially for a 14-ish minute run. This was also my highest damage in Narai, even after leaving damage on the table, so you can see there's still more potential on this route. On that note, this is the end of the video, so have a nice day.